So Tradingview recently introduced an amazing altcoin chart that I would recommend for any technical analyst stockpile. This chart removes Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all other stable coins in the market. So it really gives you a sense of scope directly on altcoins and where they stand. So without further ado, we're going to find this symbol, take a look at this chart and break it down. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Let's dive into the content. So head over to symbol search on Tradingview and type in total 3 ESBTC, and this will come up here. Simply click on it and it will load it up for you. This is the ratio total market cap excluding Bitcoin, Ethereum, and stable coins. So this, again, as I was saying, really gives you a focus on the overall capture of market share that stable coins hold in the market. So when we analyze this chart here, we're currently sitting at levels of around 0.27. So what this means is about 27% of the market share is currently sitting primarily in altcoins. And that's a relatively low figure, you would like to think, if we was in something like an Altseason. So really and truly what this chart shows us is at the moment, since sort of, where was we back here? Since May 2018 and even these peaks in May 2021, so prior bull market peaks, we have been putting in lower highs ever since, okay? And what this is primarily indicating is that right now we are still in Bitcoin season. It's predominantly Bitcoin season until we see the reversal and the bottoming structure of this chart. Now, what this again really means is when the chart is increasing in value and sort of pumping up here with these big green dildos, this is when you are primarily seeing altcoins run crazy. Again, they're taking up a lot more of the market share and capturing a lot more of the market. So really and truly right now, we are on a downtrend. It is still Bitcoin season until we see this change. Now, there are some very interesting levels on this chart that I would like to look at in regards to a percentage ratio where we could see total 3 BTC, ESBTC sort of drop down to. And that's kind of between, I think, about 0.25 to 0.23. And this is an area on this chart here where we've had multiple points of contact of resistance and support over the last few years. So it's a very interesting contact line, albeit considered we did have this sort of drawback here in January 2021. But nonetheless, and this was actually where Bitcoin came up and put in that lower high, I think, from the primary all-time high, and then started its decline. And this here, guys, this is the bear market, so to speak. This is the bear market since 2021. And this is evidence to see that overall, altcoins have been on a decline in comparison to Bitcoin, really and truly. And I think that we need to look at this and think that in comparison to Bitcoin, if we take a quick look at Bitcoin dominance has been from roughly the same sort of time on an uptrend. And going back to our chart with total free ESBTC, you'll see that since that sort of same time frame, altcoins have been on a downtrend. So it's evident to see that we are right now in Bitcoin season. And it looks as if we could have on our hands a retracement for Bitcoin Bitcoin dominance back up to its sort of 70% highs. It's a highly likely scenario that could come into fruition here. You know, there's no slowing it down. And that's not to say that altcoins aren't seeing relief and that some altcoins don't run, because they do. You know, we do see relief on certain coins, and there is bullish news that comes out about fundamentals that may see a price increase. But over the last sort of few years, let's face it, guys, there has been a lot of suppression on altcoins and depression. And until I think we get to that max pain, this is where we could see Bitcoin dominance continue to climb, so to speak. And this isn't where it tops out. And we're looking to push back to these range highs of 2021 and sort of late 2019. It's highly likely, I think, at the moment. But heading back over to our total 3 ESBTC chart, I think that this sort of range here, 25 to sort of 21, is where we could really see some good, decent recovery. Again, sitting on this trend line of previous multiple points of contact, I think it's a highly likely this is where we're trying to get to. And if we look at wave counts and breakdowns here as well, we can sort of, again, just, 5 wave corrections, typical corrections, or especially on the macro timeframes, normally bear markets, ABCs, them sort of things. You know, you've got, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This was a 5-wave correction that brought us back down to these lows of around 0.14 back in 2021. And then we saw a crazy alt season going from sort of January to sort of March, April, May, back in them sort of times. And this was where we had real euphoria. And that was after a 5-wave correction. So a 5-wave correction and then a massive run of euphoria. And this was the last sort of alt season and peak for prior coins and cycles. And what we've had here since is something similar. I think we've had a 1, a 2. This is potentially a 3, a dragged out 4, and right now we're in this 5. And I think that we are sort of replicating a prior cycle movement, so to speak, where we're having a 5-wave correction here back down to sort of a key level of support. And it would be fantastic to see this sort of a higher low than this prior January 2021 low build here. And that would be the case if we did get to that sort of 0.25 to 22 range. But overall, what this means, guys, is that altcoins are still risk off. They still remain risky and volatile until we see the rapid sort of increase back up to higher targets. I think we're still on this decline here, trying to pull back on this chart to a key level of support, which is these sort of prior highs and these previous support levels going through 2018 to 2020 before that crazy sort of alt season run. So there's so much to really digest here, in all honesty. And I think that it looks like we had something like a right angled broadening wedge here, where we was holding this level of support. You can see we was holding this level of support, and then we eventually, it looked like, because you're putting in higher highs, it looks good because you're holding the support, and then you eventually fall back, you crash down and you lose it. And I think the breakout, if we can measure the target of where this potentially could bring us, you know, it does bring you down roughly to that 2-2 sort of 2-2 area, which is where we had that point of contact of support that we was looking at. So, you know, from this right angle broadening wedge structure, there's a little bit more confidence here that this is where it could break it down to. And potentially, you know, I think we're looking towards sort of September, October, you know, pushing in late Q3, early Q4 would kind of tie up with that. And that's not to say that over the next couple of weeks coming into July, we could see some relief before actually getting that decline, but who knows? But that's that anyway. That is a right angle broadening wedge sort of pattern that's breaking down there in that sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-wave correction, looking for them to get that crazy alt season that could really kick off. Again, you want to see big candles like these, and we could be coming into the largest one yet with all the institutional adoption and liquidity that could be coming into these markets right now. You know, the prices are just being suppressed. This Bitcoin season, dominance is relatively strong. I say relatively strong. Dominance has been climbing for many months, couple of years even, so to speak. But, you know, looking back at, as I was saying, Q3 and Q4 of this year, if we analyze September months, September, October, you can see that, you know, these are, I think, points in Bitcoin dominance's chart that tie up with very interesting areas. You can see around this sort of area was around a bottom for Bitcoin dominance. This September in 2019 was a top, you know, going back to, again, September 2022, this was another local bottom that marked the bottom before the increase. So what's not to say that, you know, sometime in September 2025, right here, that this is where Bitcoin dominance is trying to sort of push to before it initially gets this drop. And this is where we get alt season. And that ties up then back with total 3 BTC. Total 3 ES BTC. Still trying to get used to it myself, and that's not right because I missed the 3, so I've got to get the 3 in there. ES BTC, thank you very much. That would tie up with us coming into sort of September here over the next few months from this right angle broadening wedge, and then going for that crazy alt season where we get these big green candles. So I think this is a very important chart to keep your eyes on, guys, you know, in correlation with Bitcoin against USDT, Bitcoin dominance. You know, there's other things that we could look at as well. ETH against Bitcoin, you know, that's almost at range lows. I don't think it's actually got there yet, so to speak. It's very, very close, but it is at range lows as well. And this is confluence that when this does start to bottom out, then that could also show signs of an alt season. You know, on the path to alt season, when Ethereum starts to outperform Bitcoin, that's also a very good sign. And there's a lot of bullish news out about Ethereum recently. So I have no doubt that it's coming, guys, but alt season at the moment is still, you know, as altcoins remain risk off, it's still Bitcoin season until it's not. And we have to keep this in mind. A little bit more patience as it pays. Nothing that I say is financial advice. Take care. Peace out.